Okay, we've been learning a lot of different things about reading nonfiction text because this first band in our unit is basically going to get us familiar with the genre. And it's also going to teach us some strategies that we can use when things get tough, okay? The first band is preparing us to do research. The second band is actually going to be where we are going to start researching a topic. Now, we've already talked about how important it is for you to make a connection with the book so that you can read it intensely, so that you have a purpose for reading it, that you have a reason for reading it, a question that you want answered. Making that connection helps you to understand what you're reading and know what you want to learn. We also talked about how we need to preview a piece of nonfiction text before we read it so that we can kind of get an idea of the way that the information is organized and presented. So we kind of get an idea of the way the information is going to go. Okay? Today, I want to talk to you about what you need to do. Oh, I forgot one of them. We also talked about how when we're taking notes, the first thing we do is identify the text structure, right? We identify the text structure, and we learned text structure last year in 3rd grade. Okay? Cause and effect, compare and contrast, sequential order or chronological order. Those are text structures, and remember when we watched the Oryx video, how do you know what to take notes on? You don't know how to take notes until you identify the text structure first. All right, does everybody remember doing that? Yes? Okay, good. All right, so today we're going to talk about some of the obstacles that can make nonfiction text tricky, that can make it hard and difficult for us to understand. So let's take a look at a sample piece of nonfiction text. I'm just going to kind of cover up, and let me go ahead and zoom in. I'm sorry that you don't have your own copy of this in front of you. I will upload a copy of this to the Teams page should you want to look at it or print it out. We're trying to minimize the number of surfaces that get touched. Okay, so here is a piece of text, the title of which is called A Sport. It's by Michael Oakes and Emily Butler Smith. Okay, so remember we talked about previewing, right? So what do you think that this piece of text is going to be about? Bryn?
About sports.
About sports, right? But about all sports, do you think?
Yes.
It might be about all sports. Anybody else have an idea? Elizabeth?
I think maybe if that one sport is maybe if they were going to hear that it's all sports these days, that all sports, I think maybe they choose one sport.
Okay, so did you understand what she said? She said because it's only singular, maybe it's just one sport. Do you have any idea from the title what sport they're going to talk about? Luna? Why do you say soccer? What in the title makes you think it's going to be about soccer? Are you just taking a guess? And soccer is kind of a very popular sport. Okay. Now, when we preview, one of the things that we notice is we look and see how the parts are, the different parts of the text. Okay, and we can see from looking at this text that what we have is we have headings and we have sections. So we have different parts and each part has a heading. Now, who can remember what is a heading supposed to do? What is a heading supposed to do for you as a reader? Natalie? Okay, good. Glad you learned that last year because that was also something you learned last year. The heading is supposed to give the reader an idea of what they're going to read about. So I want you to take a look at this heading, reasons why. So just for a second, I want you to think about what this section might be about. Reasons why. We know it's about a sport. We're not exactly sure which sport. Reasons why. So when we think about reasons why, we might be thinking about, well, a reason why this is a sport. A reason why people play this game or do this activity. How was it developed? Why anybody would be motivated to do it, right? Reasons why. All right, let's take a look at what they actually wrote in this section. As I read, I want you to think about, first of all, what you think, what your expectation was of what you were reading and what you actually saw. And then I want you to think, what makes this part of the text difficult to understand? What makes this part hard? There are many different kinds of swimming strokes. Some of the most common strokes are the front crawl, back crawl, butterfly, breaststroke, and the side stroke. Some of these strokes require a flutter kick that is short back and forth kicks with feet and toes outstretched. Other strokes, like the side stroke, butterfly, and breaststroke, involve more specific kicks. Some swim strokes are made for fast, short-distance swims. Others are designed for long-distance swimming. Okay, so what makes this difficult? What makes this part of the text difficult to understand? Haley?
You may not know what the strokes are, like what they do with the strokes.
Okay, and certainly, unless you know something about swimming, you have no idea what they're talking about. What's the difference between a butterfly and a breaststroke, right? What's a back crawl and a front crawl? How are they different? Okay, what else makes this difficult? What else makes this difficult? Elizabeth?
Because, you might be looking at it and you might know if they're calling something or they're having to do that, or what does it look like while you're doing it?
Right, what does it look like? So what would help the reader understand this better?
If you added pictures to show.
Absolutely. If there were pictures, it would certainly make it a little bit easier. What about that heading? What about that heading? Yeah, I've got a small handful of people who are paying attention and participating. Jirexi? Say it again. Okay, so this heading does not go at all with this section, right? Is this section about reasons why? No. This section talks about the different types of strokes and the different types of kicks that go with the strokes. So one way that nonfiction text can be difficult to understand and hard is that you might have a misleading heading. The heading doesn't go with the text. Or, as Elizabeth pointed out, perhaps the author could have added some kind of a text feature, like pictures, that would help you to understand it better. So this is one way that it could be difficult. The author is misleading you with the headings. Go ahead and use some hand sanitizer for me. The author might be misleading you with the headings, not really giving you a clue as to what you're going to be reading about next. Or the author may not have provided enough visual aid to help you to understand it. Okay, let's move on to the next section. And the next section is called Why Swim? So again, think about that heading and think about what this section might be about based on the heading. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States in 2009, 36% of children ages 7 through 17 and 15% of adults swim at least 6 times per year. In addition, swimming is considered the 4th most popular form of recreation in the United States. 1 hour of swimming can burn off up to 650 calories, more than you would burn off through other kinds of exercise, such as walking or biking. The U.S. Census Bureau states that swimming is one of the most popular activities among children and teens, ages 7 to 17. But an estimated 65,000 people in the United States still do not know how to swim. Okay. Sophia, what makes this section difficult to understand? It's talking about exercising and what? Can you speak up? I'm sitting right here. I can't hear you. And disease control. So whenever something talks about exercising and disease control, it's difficult to understand. What makes it difficult? Can somebody help her out? What makes this section difficult to understand? Sean?
It said walk, the heading said why swim, and it said that swimming can burn off 650 calories an hour.
Okay, so what are you saying about the heading? Was the heading accurate? Did it tell you why you should swim? Did you think that the heading matched the section? It did? So that's not what made it difficult? What made it difficult? Bryn? For this one, you mean?
Yes.
Well, sort of. It's not as off as the first one. They're telling you because it burns more calories. It's healthy for you. But I would agree it's probably not the best match. What else? Direxes? Well, I don't know. It doesn't really talk about diseases that much in here. It's certainly the Center of Disease Control. Yes, Emma. Okay, something else stood out to me. Something else about this stood out to me as making it really difficult. Want to try, Zegan?
It was telling you that you should swim, but it never did. Well, then it was saying that you should, that there are a lot of people swimming, so I just think it's a little weird because it's kind of inspiring people that can't swim.
Okay, it might seem a little bit strange. Haley?
But there's a lot of percentages in there.
Exactly. There are a lot of numbers in there. Look at, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, here's 2009, 36% of children ages 7 to 17 and 15% of adults swim at least 6 times per year. Every single sentence in this whole section has a number in it. Has numbers in it. Okay? How do you hold all those numbers in your head? How do you organize? Okay? What do you think, Elizabeth, let's see if you're still the expert on text features, what could the author have given you to help you to handle all those numbers?
They could have told you they could have told you get a piece of paper and write the numbers down, or to manage maybe
Can you think of a nonfiction text feature that helps with numbers? Aiden? Forgot what it's called. Emma? A graph, right? A pie chart, a table, a graph. Always those things really help a reader to deal with lots and lots of numbers. So are you getting an idea of what we're talking about here? Some of the obstacles, some of the things that make nonfiction reading difficult. Okay? The author not providing enough visual. All right? Misleading headings, I should say. Okay, let's look at this section here now, the next one. Swimming does your body good. While swimming can be dangerous, such as swimming in extremely cold water or swimming right after lunch, there are a lot of benefits too. However, skateboarding can also be a dangerous sport. You could lose your balance and fall, or worse, crash into cars. Even experienced skateboarders have to be careful when attempting newer and more complicated tricks. Therefore, it is important for all riders to wear a helmet. While there are several benefits to swimming, you might be wondering why is it dangerous to swim right after lunch? It's dangerous because your body is still digesting food and you might experience muscle cramps, which are involuntary and often painful muscle contractions. This will tire you out quickly, which isn't safe when in the water. On the other hand, swimming can also strengthen your heart, lungs, and other muscles and can even reduce stress. Okay, so what makes this section difficult to understand? Zegan?
It's about swimming, but people are talking about skateboarding.
Exactly. All right, it starts out talking about swimming, and then all of a sudden, it goes on a detour, right? It just decides to start talking about skateboarding in the middle of the section about swimming, okay? It went completely off topic, all right, for no really apparent reason why, okay? So another thing that makes nonfiction text tricky to understand and hard to tackle is detours and extra information that you don't really need, okay? If you look at the chart that you just glued into your journal, this is the chart for our lesson on how we're going to tackle the hard parts of our reading of nonfiction. Here are some of the things that we identified in what we were reading today. The misleading headings, the fact overload with all those numbers, the confusing beginnings, the long detours and extra information, all right, and lack of graphs and diagrams or too many, okay, because sometimes you don't know where to look. The page is covered with them, all right. So once we identify that these are tricky and make nonfiction reading tricky, then what we have to do is figure out how are we going to fix that? What strategy are we going to use to help us when we get to a tricky part? All right? You guys, I have to tell you, I've been doing this for 20 years, and rereading is the best strategy for just about every problem that you're going to encounter in reading. Go back and look at it again. Read it again. Closely examine it. Ask yourself, as you're reading the sections, ask yourself, what is this part teaching me? What is this part teaching me? What is the author trying to tell me here? And then you discuss with somebody, or you write down and journal about what you're learning, because that is going to help to increase your understanding. You ask questions like why, how, what's missing here, like Elizabeth pointed out, with some missing text features that certainly would have helped a reader to understand things better. So you want to be able to, number one, identify that it's tricky here. Why is it tricky? Why can't I get this? What am I not understanding? And then try to reread. Second part here, ask yourself, what is this part teaching me? Maybe it's also bringing up other questions like how, why. Okay? Now remember, this first bend is getting us all ready and giving us the opportunity to practice taking notes. And we already learned from a previous lesson that the first thing that we do is we identify the text structure. And then once we know the text structure, then we know what is important to the author, and that's how we know which notes to take. That's how we know what to pay attention to and jot down. So as we're working through this, as you're reading your nonfiction textbooks, you need to start taking notes in your journal. Don't just write down, I'm learning about Mars, okay? Notice, how is this structure, this section? Is it description? Is it comparing, contrasting? And then the notes that you take should be in that same structure. So your notes might be in the form of a Venn diagram. Or your notes might be in the form of a graphic organizer that makes for cause and effect. Or problem solution like the oryx. All right, that was almost extinct. All right, that was problem and solution. All right, so during independent reading time, you're not just reading your nonfiction, but you need to have your journal open and you need to be taking notes about what you're reading. All right, we're gonna move into our work time, and then we'll have a closing meeting at the end. Elizabeth, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think it's like, because you were talking about how we had to go back and that makes everything, like better with the book because you see, if you read it again, you see your mistakes and you fix them. I think if the person that wrote that story, if they would have went back and looked at what they were writing, I think the story would have been better and they would have added more stuff to the
Right. If they had gotten feedback, definitely. If they had somebody else read it, okay, and gotten feedback on it, they might have noticed all those things that we noticed about how hard it made the text to read. Okay, so today during work time, I'm going to have you guys, you're reading in your nonfiction book, you're taking notes in your journal, and you're applying the strategies that you've learned so far in this unit of study. Okay, go ahead and take out your books and begin reading.